Mic check. Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Rudy. Before we get into the title, you guys know I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Everything in this live stream is me simply sharing my opinion, nothing more, nothing less. At the end of the day, I'm just a guy sharing my opinion. One sec. For a second, I thought my mic wasn't working. At the end of the day, guys, I'm just sharing my opinion. I'm just a guy. I'm going to make mistakes, but we're going to do our best to learn from them. We're going to try and take a couple trades. We're going to try and do a little bit of investing. Trading and investing I look at as two different things. Very big differences in my book. Yes, the trading can be a lot flashier. It's been a while since we've even really taken a trade. But that being said, we'll go into the title. ATHM continues to be a title name until this trend line gives us sort of a defined move higher. Looking for a 31 break on ATHM, which would give me a little bit more confirmation. Just playing safe off that whole $31 level. Got a couple wick tops here. You have a potential downtrend of, if we go into that 15-minute, maybe we go into an hour chart, you can see it is continuing to put lower highs, but possibly developing a flat top that it can break over top of. So, I mean, off of this look, I mean, you can see the selling pressure continuing to respect that downtrend. Do we need to retrace down into these middle 29s? I'd look at the halfway of this green move as a potential play. So around this 29.50. We'll think about adding more to the position. And then trendline protection, we will continue to add, probably looking for 29 flat. But that is ATHM. We've continued to talk about this all of last week, where we have a position with a cost average under 29. Just playing this trend line. Would have liked to add some, even off of the opening above 29. I looked at it as a little bit bullish from Friday, but a nice close on Friday. Is it reasonable to expect this downtrend to break right away? Not necessarily. But over the course of the last week's trading, good green volume. Looking at the weekly candle, you can see a second consecutive week of green volume for the week is nice. Light volume to start the week, but flirting around this middle ground on our weekly for our strength, and also trying to hold positive on our daily. So if it can give us a 31 break, I would look at that as a decisive positive break for the name. But just beating the dead horse here, guys. We've talked about ATHM. I don't know how many live streams in a row. Until it gives me a decisive break of the trend line to the downside or a break to the upside, it is going to remain a name that we talk about every live stream. Moving on to the second title name, we have RIVN, which we added up here, and we started our position yesterday. 3 different fills. First fill coming in at 24s, I believe somewhere in this candle, and we bought 2 other fills, one at 20 and one at 18. So you can call it an average of 23.20, which right in this range. We like this consolidation. I would have liked to say that we had an out at the end of the day. We actually were on the ask at 24 flat just to get a small trim, but weren't able to get that fill, which is kind of just respecting these previous lows over here. So maybe I could have just said, hey, let's mark it out a piece and we can think about reloading. But now Before, my out was probably going to be that 23.10. Now I'm more inclined that it showed me this move, taking out last week's high. I was more inclined to just say, hey, let's give it to one of these trend lines, whether they're perfectly set or not. I would give a lot more leeway to this one with more acts of contact. Where if it gives this up, we're looking at probably a potential 23 break. So if the market does kind of come on in, which looking at the NQ, we're going to get an open here shortly. But looking at the NQ, kind of stair stepping down, you can see potential retracement pattern right here, rejecting that 702. So 1, 2, 3, rejecting the previous lows off of this retracement higher, and now giving up the lows. I would say you probably have a trend line break as well that back tested it. So we'll see if the NASDAQ continues to be bearish, and I am going to put an alert on this name that is right at a 5 and catching a bid right now. This is LYRA. This was kind of my trade for the day, and we're going to re-put that alert in until it's not going to alert it. But I'm looking for some sort of retest back into towards this gap, and it keeps on alerting like it's getting triggered, which is very irritating. Well, we'll just wait, and we can always just come back and watch this. But I'd like to see this retrace down, and we're going to play this off of a 450 level. So retracing down, 484s is the low, which is getting into this wick briefly. Let's see if we can put that alert in now. Let's go look at the top movers. We didn't go over oil, but we've talked about oil enough to say that 88 was a significant level that it needed to break over, and now decisively holding above 88. We got 90 flat marked, we got this double top marked, and then we have our half retracement marked at 96. So looking at some movers, we see oil and then a little bit of indecision. End phase had a price target decrease, which is not really that concerning for me. We've already kind of anticipated that this price is gonna probably give up these 120s, and it's already under 120 right now. We actually did buy a little bit yesterday around that 123 level. I felt it was putting a decent candle with not too much gap selling for the name coming in, but you know, who knows? Maybe these 120s can hold, maybe they can't. I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm not going to worry about something that I'm looking at as a long-term investment. And this is where I differ. You know, if I was trading this name, I'd actually probably be looking short. To short down to this 115, maybe even continuation further to the downside. A notable move is NVAX. We took a stop out of NVAX. We respected the 790s. You know, it is what it is. It was a fun trade, and we can think about a potential reload on the name if this wants to come in closer to this 7 level. I like some of the levels down here. So let's just alert these 740s, and we can think about a reload on the name if 740s want to come on into play. Looking at the top movers for percentage today, we see Kazim getting a gap up on volume. Not interesting to me. TTOO, if this were to get back over 40 cents, I would say potential trade there. Mullen, talked about Mullen a little bit yesterday. Right up to a 50 level, I'd say being above yesterday's price. Early in the day, I don't know if I'd buy it, but you know, this could be a name that catches a bid, holds these wick lows decisively. And LYRA coming on in, and increased selling pressure since the open. But I'm going to be very intrigued in this name, so let's just put an alert underneath that wick low and see if that can continue the trigger. But you can see the nice U build trading higher above this high from June. I'd say is a reasonable move. But all in all, I would say we are going to be patient, even if this starts getting down to this towards this gap. We'll think about directly off the gap, to start off, but just want to see a little bit of price action with the name before we rush into it. But other than that, it is an open book from here. So let's look at Rivian trying to hold these 23s, wick down to 23.12. A little bit of an indecision. I'd like to see it retrace up, fill this gap. Is it going to get much buying action off of 23s? This is going to be what decides kind of how we're going to finish this trade out. But let's go take a look at what this bid is looking like. And we'll take a look at the daily chart for this name. But I'd say looking at the daily chart, gapping down below our 34, strength right around this middle ground. A little bit of increased volume, but back-to-back indecision candles, LYRA. Let's look at the 15 here for this. Getting closer to this 450 level, which it got as low as 60. So let's put that alert just a little bit below that yet again. And we can keep our eyes on that if that wants to come into play. Some of these oil names, Silica, decisive move through the trend line. We've taken no outs on the name. You can probably guess where we are trying to build the position. But I mean, we don't talk about Silica that much. It's more oil equipment. But decisively catching a bid. 60 cents a gap EPS. $14 name. I think it's a reasonable oil alternative if you're looking at the equipment side of things. I think it's a reasonable setup. You have strength. Looking at our weekly chart, we can see strength decisively trading higher as well. A nice sort of wedge break that we've had on the name. MSOS, taking a look at MSOS. We've had a couple outs into this 9 level. No outs yesterday. Looking at some movers just on our watch, I would say Geo catching a bid off of yesterday. We are very interested around this. We can go look at this 15-minute chart to give you a better look. And traded down at the close, but looking at this nice volume move. I mean, I would expect on the pre-market if it had traded down that, there were some fills that probably got executed in this range. But a decisive green move, and now starting to catch a bid off the open. And I'd say GM, a decisive move off the open. I don't think anything really changes. You could look at this 33.50 as some sort of neckline break. The gap high is 33.60, and I mean we're coming aggressively to the upside on the name. Alibaba. I'm not surprised to see the 87s hold. We were watching this as a full red engulfing candle, and I simply just said all I need to see is these wick lows hold, which is called an 87 break, but a nice green engulfing candle coming on in to start the day when the Nasdaq is down a little over 1/4%. Is there anything that's worth looking at right here? I would say you have a neckline break, closes at a higher low, opens down, and then nice volume coming into it off the open. Rivian, nice action off that trend line, which is probably worth an ad had I been more prepared. I wasn't even logged into my account off the open. Not making excuses, but I was going to go try and maybe get some sort of add to this position. As long as this can hold 23s, I think we'll be alright holding the name. But, I mean, you never know. You never know. Let's go take a look back at LYRA, which the initial thought was to try these 450s, but now I can see it's leaving a little bit of a wick off this first candle, which is a good sign. Looking at some other movers for the day, ASTS. I would say getting over 92s is a good start. Now I'm not gonna say that this is gonna rip, but it actually is flirting with a break of this channel. Whether this channel set perfect or not, whether it can be adjusted, maybe, but I don't see how you could adjust it to the point where it'd still be trading in the channel. But that doesn't mean that it can't get rejected and boom, trade right back in. But trading at these 394s, we did have a really good fill off this wick low. Didn't panic. We knew that we had a trend line that could potentially hold. Got as low as 370s. But nice little move for Space Mobile today. Not the greatest financially sound name, but I think the chart setup gives you a decent look of a potential channel, and we'll know if we're right about this if this can break over. We have 410 low marked and 418 to 420 low marked. If this were to start trading above 4 again, I would say it's a name that could potentially catch a bid. ATHM, good buying pressure off of, looks like we have a 67 low on the name. Took some top losers for today. CXAI continuing to get punished, which I can tell you one of the main reasons would probably be weak strength on weak volume. You have a clear shorting level to short it down to this gap at 160. What happens from there, I really don't know. Nikola continuing to get beat up to the downside. Some would say that, oh man, Nikola, nice wick low. Well, I mean, your strength is not something I'd be very interested in. And you can see the false kind of break on this. I mean, all this green volume here was enough to just barely eke it positive on your weekly. If it were to start catching a bid, maybe there's something there, but I'd say your gaps at 71 and 60 are clear targets for the name. GNS also another big mover to the downside, kind of starting the gap below this trend line. Let's look at this 15-minute chart. And we can see that, potential gap down, closing right at that trend line. We still had this alert in at 115. I would have liked to see that have gotten alerted personally. In Space Mobile catching a bid, nice green engulfing candle, not the most amount of volume. Rivian also catching a bid, retraced up, filled the gap, not too much gap selling off of this level. So just showing patience, trading below my entry that, pretty much after we started this position, this red candle was nothing but, a nice move to the upside. For it to go against someone's entry that had no outs in this move, it'd be very easy to just panic and get out of the position. But, a nice move off the open. I would just look for this trend line to continue to hold. If we get a high break, I would look at that 24 level as a potential break level. Early in the day, if it got there this early, this is a nice looking candle on stock that's trading right at that middle ground, and it has some previous lows. You can see the selling pressure off of those upper 23s. In end phase, I would question what the analyst is even thinking about moving his price target down to 130. Uh, Analysts, they're very short-term minded, and we've already identified that this next earnings report is probably not going to be the greatest for multiple reasons that we could go into. But I think long-term, end phase is a reasonable long-term investment, and when I'm looking at a long-term investment, I'm not going to shy away from buying reasonable support levels, where I'd look down here as a reasonable support level, and just going off the body candles, I mean, that's 118s. So is it going to be able to hold these 120s? I mean, I can't tell you guys. I really don't know. I'm actually probably rooting for it to trade down. But if it were to get over this 124, that also could be looked at as a neckline. I might even be inclined to add to the position. But I mean, time will tell. We're going to keep accumulating the name when we feel it is necessary. Looking at the 15-minute for end phase, gaps down, retraced up. You can see it's getting some wick selling into that gap. So is it going to be able to? And you can see where the wick low comes into. Pretty much just trading right in the middle of this channel. So uh, can you say this is a support hold off the opening candle? Maybe, maybe. Um, but going into the single oil name that we have on the watch, we were really rooting for this to just continue. The only thing that really kept us away from the name yesterday is one, red engulfing through the level, not too much gap fill buying off of 5110, and also has this dividend. So when you're messing with a name that is getting ready to pay a dividend, some would say that's kind of a crapshoot. But all in all, I am okay buying this. Had it gotten down under to like 50 flat or a little bit more into those 49s, had it gotten down to the 48.82 gap right here, I would have been surprised, but I'm sure I probably would have dipped into some more. GM convincingly catching a bid. Uh, I I don't know what else to say about this except for how about that hold of the trend line? I mean, the amount of buying pressure that came into the name. This wick is a little bit of a volume spike, and this is the start of a little bit more increased volume relative to what it was doing over the course of this consolidation period. So I'd say that's a pretty decent look. And the one question that I would have had with the GM, like if you erase this green candle, is, I mean, looking at Ford, it has pretty much the same sort of chart look, and Ford was putting in a green engulfing candle over top of the neckline. Now, catching an increased bid on top of it, but GM just hasn't given that move yet. So I would say I'm not surprised that it's catching a bid. But I would look for a 34 break for continuation higher. You got some lows up here in these upper 35s. A nice red candle, which may be the right short position in this area. It gets a little bit worried over top of 34. So let's look back at this LYRA. LYRA. Uh, Wicking down towards this, I would really like to see 50s, but you can see starting that red candle, if it does break this wick low on this candle, I'd be a little inclined to try, or not as inclined to try it, but if it closes this candle with a wick and continues holding above 450s, I would be inclined to think that we're going to get some sideways action. Maybe we can mark some sort of a downtrend if it catches a bid, and then trade sideways long enough we can look for an area to enter the name. Invos, we talked about Invos yesterday. Looking at the 15-minute, man, we just really had that alert price at the wrong area. Looking at the open of the day, we knew we had the downtrend rolling in somewhere like this. But just looking at the open, I mean, it would have been easy to say, hey, if we get over top of this 28, so had I had the alert off of 28, we would have had a decent amount of time to think about entering the position. Man, would have been a beautiful entry, would have been able to hold a piece into the close, and, might actually even get some continuation leading into today. Space Mobile, testing 4. If this is a retracement, that'd be the one thing that would concern me, is that rejecting that 4 could be a little bit concerning. But if this gets over 410, I mean, it's not going to take much to push it over that wick top from last week, which is a 415, leading right up to this sort of flat bottom break. Boom, reject, possibly rejecting, trade down into a level, and then we want to see this channel eventually give a break. But a nice test of 4. Oil up to 89 now. I didn't even notice Disney. We talked about Disney yesterday doing the job that it needed to do. Filled the gap, which was that was the main goal that we talked about. As it was trading down lower, we said, hey, before we even think about trying these 80 support, which looking back, it'd be like, man, why didn't we try 80 support, right? But we wanted to see it fill that gap before we would have had a little bit more conviction in that 80. Well, yesterday it did fill that gap, traded back in, and we actually closed above this low. But had this traded back down in, we would have probably tried this 80-50, and then maybe as it retraced down a little bit lower, we could have maybe thought about it a little bit more. But full disclosure, guys, my position in Disney is red. Uh, so we didn't want to just continue rushing into the name. We know that there is some news related. Uh, oh, hold on. Pause. 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 Rivian really getting going here. I didn't even see the 24 break, but you can see the convincing uh, candle. Just a simple hold of 23, which is what we were looking for. What had I been a little bit more prepared and logged in, maybe we would have had another ad on the name, but I'm not gonna be upset about not having an ad on Rivian, but decisive move through this 24, a nice couple green candles. If we get an equal size candle, let's look at the percent move from top to bottom. We're looking at 5% move from the bottom, 2.5 each candle. If we see this up to like 2450s, we can start looking for wick pressure. If it starts wicking into 2450s, is there any decisive level in there that we can see? Uh, Looking at the full entirety of the retracement that's taking place, I would say upper 24s. You can see some rejection, tries the hold, gives it up, retrace and retest of the previous lows. That comes up at 2550s. So catching a nice bid, Rivian is, so that's nice. ASTS, decisive move through that downtrend. Very nice move, and actually getting some increased volume on the current candle that we're in. It looks like everything's kind of catching a bid. Let's sit back and just enjoy the show that's taking place. DFS is the one outlier that I'd say, it retraced up, it gaps down, retraces up, fills that gap. Let's look at the daily chart here. You can see we did already fill that 88.70, so let's just mark that 88.70 and go and take a look at how this transpired. So 88.70 fills that gap. It retraces up, shows the strength. Doesn't quite get to the gap down actually. So we close at 89.67. The high gets up to 63. So pretty darn close. But I would say the red engulfing candle through the level. We're just going to be patient. But down here around 88s is the low. If that wants to give out, we got to go to the daily chart and look at this gap fill. That should be at 87.30, and now it looks like it is. 87.30 gap could be our next little watch point area, and low 80s after that. Palantir putting in a green candle. LYRA giving up the level. This is what we kind of want to see. If this can show enough weakness to get down to this gap, I'd say averages in at 430. But coming on in to test these 50s right now. First, we're going to look at Rivian and see what that tape's looking like. Strong, bids increasing. Mr. Drift, how we doing, brother? My bad, I just looked over. Yeah, Rivian is a new one that we started yesterday. I felt that the chart setup at the time of the trade was decent, and strength was relatively reasonable. But a nice little U build, gaps up, fills the gap, shows me a little bit of buying pressure. but then as it traded sideways long enough right here, you can see the one candle that we started that position in was showing early signs of breaking that, showed us the move, now getting a trend hold. Nice move off the beginning of the day. Not going to complain about that. ATHM, I'd say gapping down, doesn't have the strength to retrace up to the gap. Given the feel like, hey, if 2950s doesn't want to hold, potentially retracing back down to the trend line where we're going to continue to add to the name. ASTS, I'd say, and GM and Rivian are the three movers for today. That I would say ATSS, a nice move and getting close to that 410, where if this was going to discredit this, we're pretty much trading right at our last retracement, actually trying to hold above it on nice volume. Looking at some movers over here, we can look at some top volume. I'd say Go EV is probably a name trading relatively strong. Right around that middle ground, retrace down in. I'm sure this is close to a 618. Nope, it is a last retracement. Catching a little bit of a bid. Is that area going to be able to hold? If this were the case, then I'd say we'd want to see a trend start. So looking for 50s to hold there. Mara, we talked about Mara trading down into this sort of support level yesterday. So I'm not surprised to see that catching a little bit of a bid off of that level. AMC decisively moving up. Still a weak name. I'd expect rejection. You know, has some room to the upside, but has an 860 gap that probably needs to get rejected. In my humble opinion, would probably reject. Sorry to the ape longs, but I mean this. Yeah, I mean you guys did it to yourself. That's what I'd say about that. 10x, trading down array, strong name, one that we wish we had. We tried it a few times, just wasn't able to get a reasonable read on the company. Looking at SoFi, SoFi is a decisive move, actually a neckline break off your daily. If this wanted to be some sort of retracement, I'd say 925 is a reasonable cut area for some trims, of course. But I mean, looking at everything, I would say we're gonna be patient. We never did put an alert back in for this LYRA. LYRA. We can take a look. Trying to hold 50s right here. Just looking to trade any type of continuation where my levels meeting in right here. It's trying to hold this wick low, but I'd say when this retraces, that's going to be the start of some sort of channel. So this one's going to take some time to, let's mark for that 450 again, and just if that gets triggered, then we'll think about it. Rivian, nah, probably could have took some outs as it was a whole dollar in the money, but I'm kind of tempted to just hold it. Already broke on the second candle, already broke over yesterday's high. Probably is worth a trim, but I would say we're gonna continue to just hold. End phase slightly in the green, continuing to get some elevated volume relative to what it's really been doing. So that's a good sign. We'll see how this acts. I think it's a reasonable long, personally, but not something that we're gonna buy just yet. If it got over 24s, maybe. GM. Let's keep looking. Let's go to sort it by volume. TTOO. Giving out that a nice wick of buying coming in right here, but I would say that candle with a minute left, closing red engulfing to the downside, would just lead me to think that, hey, down the 26 seems reasonable. Uh, you can see not buying the move higher. You can see it actually filled the gap and now trading below that gap. So I'm not interested there. CGC, nope, looks like garbage. I stay away from these that are just a knife to the downside on weak strength, and then they just gap up massive. And all these names ever seem to do is right off the open, it'll try to make a push and boom, retrace all the ways back down. Probably ends up taking out $1 to the downside. Mullen showed us a move, holds the move. If it continues to hold this, our trade down here would give me the feel of flat bottom break eventually, but one more leg down. I think this one is getting close uh, to getting a bid off of, like, if it traded down here to like 15 or like 25, I wouldn't be surprised to see it catch a bid and try to keep testing up towards this. This true resistance level is at 88, which is your flat bottom break. Boom, it tested it once, potentially getting ready to go test it again. Maybe. Maybe. Keyword maybe. Because nobody really knows for sure. Neo, decisively green candle. Still negative strength. Is it going to be able to catch a bid? Breaking the tight channel on consolidation. Could be something that finds a way to catch a bid. ATHM, let's go take a look at this 15-minute. Not a 15-minute that I'd want to try these 50s, but if this was red engulfing down here to call it 29, I am probably gonna add a buy. So let's get an alert off these 29.30s if that wants to trigger. We're gonna think about adding some. Other than that, Rivian probably was worth a sell off of that nice move to the open, but I think the patience eventually does pan off. You can see the second candle actually getting increased volume where it goes from 240K to 518K. If this trades down and tests back in these upper 23s, I don't see why it couldn't catch a bid. BTI gapping up, showing a little bit of continuation. We're just ready to collect the next dividend. You know, if we get a nice pump in price leading up to that dividend, great. But actually flirting close to these 33.50s, I'd say, is flirting with the neckline. Which I wouldn't be sold on anything until it, showed me, hey, let's fill this gap. So maybe that gap there is an add in the start of this previous low. Hasn't been able to test up into those 34. So call it 34.50 to the 25s. Our 75s is a reasonable trim area. Looking back at the volume. AMD, potentially a trend line setting up for AMD. XLE not taking out the highs, but oil rejecting 89s, which is fine. I'm expecting oil to have continuation. It's strong on the daily, strong on the weekly, strong on the monthly, strong on the chart setups and technicals. Unless this were to wash out top and trade back into like 87.50 sometime today, but if it closed at a high, that's gonna be a key indicator for me that, yeah, we could be looking for continuation. ASTS really looking bullish in my opinion. If we just cleared the chart and said, yeah, we've got sideways consolidation, we're getting closer to that positive. Does it reject positive? Do we see some shorting come in at some of these lows? But if this really started catching a bit, I'd say your true breakout level is a 475. So if we got the early entry, we'll call it a 390 because we've had fills at 390. Early entry of 22% for our breakout price, I'd say that's not a half bad sort of look. Amps testing the trend line. Is it a perfectly set trend line? Probably not. But we're probably going to give this the 590s. If 590s ends up stopping us out, hey, it stops us out. Uh, but if it can find a way to hold this price, and if I did get stopped out and it caught a bid, I'd probably be telling myself that, yeah, we could have gave this down to the 560s. But I'm not 100% sold on this name yet. We did like the earnings report, but giving a negative break, I'd need to see this trend line hold and start to give some price action to the upside. Rivian, that candle really looks good. I would say up towards these 75s. We're definitely going to have some outs on the name. But now a whole dollar in the money and trying to push higher, I'd say it looks pretty good. MSOS, does it get any gap fill buying? Is what I want to see. Soundhound, kind of that same little setup as ATSH, where we have a weak name flirting closer to that positive potential ascending channel, whether it's perfectly set or not. But actually, uh, trying, we had outs, our stop losses in at 22s yesterday. Um, yeah, I'm surprised I'm even still in this position. But let's look at the 15-minute for Soundhound. A nice 3 candle move. Let's just clear out the chart and say, yeah, I would say a clear downtrend that it's trying to flirt with. Is it going to be able to catch a continued bid higher? The volume, I'm not sold on the volume yet. But consecutive candles of decent volume isn't bad. Rivian does have a wick top up towards those 50s. Oh, to actually go get our first trim on the name, we're going to take a uh, let's take a 1/10 trim on the name, and let's see if we can get a little bit higher price. If it trades back underneath 30, we're just going to mark it. Until then, we're going to try and get this up to the 40s. There's under 30s briefly, trying to hold these 30s. Bid quickly stacked up to 32s. Now 33s. Let's take a 1/10 trim. First outs for the name. Over $1 in the money. So I mean, are you guys not entertained? Is what I'd say to that. Nice move, and now pushing higher. I would say 24.75 is going to be next out. Where we can think about, being over $2 in the money, over 25s is reasonable. COSM coming all the ways back in. LY. LYRA. Trying to hold, you can see the wick selling coming in the middle of this red move. We haven't talked about BAC. Has a neckline break right at 28.50. Opens down slightly and a nice push through that, setting up a sort of a bull flag look. ATHM trading down 29.40s. Silica. Is Silica worth early trims? We have a decent position on Silica, but I'm more inclined to just hold it. We're just finally breaking this sort of wedge pattern that we had drawn out. Had it would have pulled back into 12s, I'd say that was a reasonable area where we could have thought to add some more, but not bad. Man, we woke up way too early this morning. Other than that, I mean, if there's anything you want to take a look at, Drift, more than willing to take a look at it. Rivian trading back down to those 25s, getting bought up quick. ASTS, I would say, let's see if this can give us a 410 break. Let's actually see if it can get over 420s today. I think if it got over 420s today, we could see it catch a nice bid over top of those 415s to start. Damn, I got the yawns. BAC trading back down towards those 50s. Say Disney, actually a pretty decent look. Take a look at end phase on candle number 3. Take a look at Baba. Has a nice bull flag setup as well. Is it going to be able to push higher? DFS giving out the lows. ATHM crossing over those 25s. So we are going to go take a look at the bid for this name. Very light volume. Um, SFWL. Holy buckets. Significant move here. Actually, looking at the daily chart, nice break over top of those 13s. Looked reasonable, actually. Looks like it's a halt name. It's halted up twice. Thought it was gonna halt down right there. And then Holo. Halted down, now halted up. HRMY, let's take a look at it. Gaps up. Rivian, I would say down to these 2390s should be pretty decent support. End phase continuing a move to the upside. Yeah, I mean, it's just a damn shame. I feel bad for the people that, they looked at the downgrade and they're like, yeah, dude, I mean, it's an analyst downgrade. Let's just get out. And they're potentially punching out of a great long-term investment, which is a damn shame. Which is, I don't know uh, how many decisions would be based off of that, but it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. And just because it's moved like this, I wouldn't say the end phase is out of the woods. I'd say it still looks like a short. Looking at the green candle, yeah, that's nice, but ultimately this could trade sideways and even trade lower still, based off of that, based off this look. SFWL. Light volume still, so not a lot on the tape here. We have open of the next candle. Let's look at some of these other top movers. Giving the look of potential tight channel. See how well that can follow that. And ATHM continuing the trade down. Let's set an alert off of these 2910s. And I think off of that trigger, I think we're just going to go punch market. Say Soundhound, is this move going to be legit? It's right at some resistance, right at these previous lows. Just marking these previous lows, I'd say. Man, I hate when I have a disrupted sleep schedule. Woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning this morning. We can move sound down back up here. Take a look at rig. Rig has a setup for a flat top up here. Get some sleep. Been up since 2 a.m. Yes, 2 a.m. I attempted to go back to bed, but once I seen it was 4 o'clock, I said to myself that, yeah, I think we're up for the day. Yeah, I am working later today, which is a little unfortunate. But I mean, it is what it is. By that time, I should snap out of it a little bit. Just kind of feeling groggy right now. Invax, trying to catch a little bit of a bid. ATHM opens up a little bit off the next candle, but trading back down. Still not very much volume. But down here near these 29s, I would expect some buying pressure. A lot of these body candles and some wick lows coming in right below that 29. GM leaving a wick up towards those 34s. Rivian still holding a nice candle. Space Mobile still holding a nice candle. As long as it's above 4, I think I'm pretty bullish on this name right here if it can hold 4s. Soundhound putting in a nice green candle as well. Talk about the resilience here. If this ends up panning out where we can get a 270 break, I would be pretty impressed with myself, in all honesty. SFWL. Let's put an alert on this name for a retest of 11. I don't know if we have any more left. We don't. Let's go see what we got over here. Invax, we can remove that. GNS, we can remove that, I think. Now let's put that alert in for 7s. LYRA. Let's go take a look at this chart now. Still holding 450s. But you can see the sort of consolidation. Is it setting up for a breakdown? Let's go get this. Invos. Man, it sucks not having this this fill on Invos. Intel decidedly up. I think this is in the realm of profit take. And it actually did test up to 40s. What's this 15 looking like? A little bit of increased selling pressure on this washout top. Yeah, let's go get a piece off of Intel. This will be the first, actually I think the second. We thought we were gonna be able to get fills on it, but let's get a piece off of. We'll take a 1/7 trim on Intel and open up a little bit of capital. But a nice move on Intel, and hopefully we can get a move up higher. So we'll keep Intel on watch and continue to trim that name. If it wants to push up into those 40s, just looking at Intel, I'd say it has some room. You know, it has a previous low that it rejects, so that's up in those upper 40s, and we have top end of the channel. So I mean, is it? I know Reload's bottom end of the channel probably has a decent support level, so this gives us all the ways till early October to maybe get a pullback on the name. But Intel, a very strong name. We could actually get potential channel break to the upside, where if it did break, I'd say a true flat bottom break took place at this 42 level. So, you know, adding to this trim that we just had on Intel, I'd say that even if it did catch a bid, eventually I would see it as a good trim. GoDaddy. Wow, 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 wow. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's a nice flat top that it has. That had some good strength up to. Positive break, increased volume over the last 2 weeks. Gap EPS of 53 cents. Expected decent profitability. And Rivian catching a continuation bid here. We have one consolidation candle, and now is this breakout? We have 8 minutes left, but if this gets over top of 50s, how much volume ends up coming into here? So a nice move on Rivian. I haven't looked at Fiverr today, and we just got alerted on the LYRA. This is why patience. LYRA. You can see the stair step coming on in. How tight of a channel is this going to be to the downside? Where we can take this out for now, but trying to get bought up off of 50s. Let's go see what the tape looks like. LYRA. We got 20 lots on 46. Nothing on the ask at 50s, which is a little bit surprising. Chipping away some 46s. It took out a good chunk of them. 18 of them to be exact. DFS giving up 88s. We're right at this 88 support on red engulfing. I'd say it's probably getting ready to take it out. Soundhound rejecting those 38s. A little bit of increased volume as well. Also potentially right at a downtrend, but still trading underneath that downtrend. Can this green move catch a bid? That's the next question. If we pull back into like 230s, can it catch a bid from there? Geo rejecting the level, kind of discrediting a retracement here. So basically gonna test back down to this 7 support. Seems reasonable, seems likely, but are these longs that came in over here yesterday gonna jump back in? Whether they're still in it or that would be the concerning part, is if it gave up 7 now, is the right long in where this could break down 7s. So worth keeping an eye on that probably. This SFWL. I do not like that volume look there. Not in the slightest. Intel coming all the ways back in. So I'm lucky that I jumped over to that and took a look at it. But it looks like everything's kind of giving up a little bit of strength. You can see the NVAX reclaiming 8s. So uh, wicking down to those 750s. I mean, that would have been a reasonable area to maybe think about entering back in. You can see the strength negative though. So is this setting up a bear flag where you have, increased red volume? I mean, if it got back over top of 870s, I'm probably gonna regret getting out of the name. ASTS, is it setting up resistance? Is it setting up an area that's gonna get rejected? Potentially. Rivian. Sideways consolidation, we can see when we were full green engulfing candle, this volume wasn't really setting up like it was getting ready to break out. Wicking down, let's get an alert off of these 430s. Soundhound red engulfing, increased volume with only 3 minutes left. Let's get an alert off of 28. That wants to break down 30s. We might just get out of the name or get an out back in at those 22s. Potentially could just wick us out, but I don't see how else, what more I could do for this name. Disney giving up the ghost. Everything has this same sort of look. BAC right at that uh, 2850 level. Rivian still holding above 24s. Even though it looks like everything's kind of catching a little bit of resistance. Nasdaq now down half of percent. I still think Rivian has really good support. If it does break down 24s, if it really came in, uh, I'd say it's a reasonable trend line hold. If you look at it from this perspective, where back down to the original entry, if it did happen, seems like a reasonable add. I'd say oil is still continuing to churn higher. You can see the washout top kind of came in on trying to hold 89s.
Alright, in this video we're going to talk about
Oh yeah, other than that, I mean, man, uh, I don't really want to force myself into anything with the Nasdaq continuing to churn down. You can see the gap down tries to retrace up, but I would say right in around it, just a lot of information still needed. Is this something that's going to get rejected? I, I mean, I couldn't tell you, but you probably have some sort of wedge pattern being built, give or take. Soundhound down to these 230s now. But it did show us a 3 candle move, so we'll see. Let's look at some volume movers and go from there. This actually is an interesting look right here. You have the washout top, nice volume increase. It showed a move early, trading lower, really light volume on this consolidation period, and now tried to make the move. It's attempting to push for this 509, but you can see the wicks coming in towards the start of that gap. These very funny. 230s trying to hold, 4s trying to hold, 24s holding. We haven't looked at PayPal. PayPal filled the gap, so I mean, check the box off there. If this wants to trade down to 61, I'd say it's a reasonable add. BABA holding 89s, BAC holding 2850s. DFS gave up the level. Looks like we are gonna continue trading down. ATHM seeing a little bit of wick buying, wick lows at 29.50s. If this comes and triggers this alert, we are going to try and add. Invax, you can see a little bit of selling pressure coming into that red candle, so that's expected. A little bit of wick selling trying to hold 710s. Invax was just at 790, now up to 820s. I mean, let's see, there's that 790. Nice volume, actually nice increasing volume coming in. Is it going to have enough pressure to push over 50s? Silica pushing through 14s. Nice decisive move on Silica here. Where I'd say, in front of 15s, 1550s seem like reasonable trims. LYRA. Trying to hold these 50s. Trading inside the channel, stair stepping down. APLD. I mean, the natural gas ET or futures is continuing to hold this trend line. Let's go see what Boyle's looking like. Boyle flat. Soundhound continuing to try and hold 230s. Rivian holding 24s. Space Mobile holding 4s. GM holding 33s. Invax trading down. A lot of indecision here and a lot of volume. A name I'm probably happy I'm not a part of. End phase, you can see the bull flag, you can see the increased volume. Candle pullback, gave the stair step look. If it gets over top of 123.50s, I mean, we could see this pushing over 24s. Soundhound, is this going to be a bull flag that pans out? I could see rejecting the top end of the channel still. ATHM, that alerts us. I think we're gonna be ready for it. LYRA. Testing right up to those lows. FFIE, you can see the buying pressure coming on in. I mean, oil. It's a ExxonMobil. Premium oil with Chevron looking like. Yeah, two premium oil names are holding pretty well in the course of the day. BAC right at that 50 level. DFS catching a small bid off of those. Got very close to that 87.30. I mean, silica is on a tear right now. ASTS, this is a nice candle. Is it gonna catch a bid? LYRA. LYRA. Showing that wick. You can see the buying pressure as it got really close to that gap. I think this SoFi looks good for a trade. So we'll take a look at this SoFi at this 9 level. We're gonna try this SoFi off this 9 level. Like this setup on SoFi. If this was a retracement, I'd say up to those 35 seems reasonable for first outs. ATHM doesn't look like we're gonna get that. Hmm. Sorry guys, I was responding to somebody. Uh, ATSM, looking at this 15 minute, you can see this tight sideways consolidation period right here. I would not be surprised to see this really catch a bid on a 410 break, but our comparison on sort of similar charts, Soundhound rejecting and trading back underneath this downtrend, right at this middle ground of this green move. I am a little bit inclined to say that I think this is going to end up breaking down, but we will give this a full 220, 222 out. Bank of America trying to hold 50s, not surprised. End phase, kind of a false wick on light volume. That would lead me to think that this could be need to trade down a little bit, retest of 23s. Rivian trading back down to these 24s, I would be inclined to say that this could catch a bid in these upper 90s. SoFi, let's go take a look back at SoFi and see what that is looking like. You can see down to these 89s. I think we're going to try and keep adding to this name. Where let's just get another order in. Even though it's against this, we have 3 candles of decreased volume. I think it's safe to say that we could use a 30-minute chart where we have some levels in these low 90s, but now up to these right up to 80 or 99s. So back to that 15-minute chart, you can see a little bit of buying pressure. Would have been nice to get some 97s there. So let's see if we can get those 97s again. We're gonna keep this on watch. Let's clear our chart out, and I would say that this has a reasonable uptrend. Could have been trading a channel, and it could be trying to trade back in this range. So just in case this wants to fall back in, just marking these 90s or this sort of flat top break, and then marking that 92. I think down to 92 should have some reasonable buying pressure. Back down to these 97s. Let's see if we can, or 96 is on the tape. Let's get a small ad here on SoFi, and let's try it right here. We have 6 minutes left. It is increasing volume a little bit, but let's get another order out there, and just try and buy this dip on SoFi, where we're gonna get an order off 894, and then we're gonna go with a truer size order off of these 92s. So we'll see how that goes. And Soundhound crossing over right through 28s. So let's watch this. Let's get a stop out for the name as well. Let's look at GM real quick. I gotta see something. Okay, let's look back at SoFi, and I think we're gonna add SoFi to the in 99s. Now rolling through the tape, so let's see where that second fill came in at. We still have open orders off 92 and 94. I'm starting to snap out of it a little bit too. Uh, Soundhound wicking down, so it's nice to see a little bit of buying pressure. And looking at that 5 minute, you can see nice volume spike and nice green candle coming in there, where we're kind of looking at that as a potential area. But that is sort of that last retracement area as well. Let's get back to SoFi and let's add SoFi up here. But we will get SoFi added to the stocks for today. Rivian right back into these 2392s, testing this sort of top. Is this going to be an area where we could think about adding? It's not getting any buying pressure off of that, which is a little bit concerning. Looking around, Intel still trying to hover around 39s. End phase kind of giving up the ghost. That washout top, we're on a 5 minute too, my bad. You can see that washout top. It just didn't have any volume. That's the biggest key, I would say, is when you're dealing with a when you're dealing with these sort of breakouts where you're looking for it to break higher, that volume is a really big indicator. You know, there's going to be times where it doesn't really continue for you, but whether the volume is higher or not, there's going to be times that just wash out tops like that. You know, but I would say in that particular scenario, I mean, if we go back to that 5 minute, you can see a little bit of volume, but not really anything on that move up that would say, yeah, this looks really good. So that's one thing I'd say about it. BAC, kind of giving that washout top. Now this does have nice increased volume a little bit. It's increasing. We have a minute left of this candle. So if this does get back up to this area, I would say this looks more inclined for trying to push higher. Let's see if it can get over 2870s. ASTS, you can see just hovering right here. We'll see what this open of the next candle looks like. If this trades sideways and retest 4, all it would take here is for this to hold 4, and I would say it looks pretty good. Looking at an oil name Hussa trying to push higher. Let's look at the daily. You can see a little bit of a U build here, holding positive strength. All it would take really is enough volume to really push over these 250s. I would say it seems like a reasonable breakout area. So alerts off 250 is reasonable. This SFWL, I mean, looking at this 15 minute, you're going to see that this red volume is no joke, but coming right down into this level, is that going to be able to catch a bid from there? Um, SoFi testing back up to that 9, trying to hold above 9. This has got the volume increase to the upside. We have 250 and 340K, a little bit of a washout wick for the continuation, and red engulfing back into the move, but pretty much trading, giving wicks down to that previous high and now trying to reclaim 9. If it can get over top of that area, I mean, looking at the daily chart, you can see getting close to that positive strength. All it would take is just holding above those 92s, and this could easily catch a bid. So we have resting orders on that retest of 92, so we'll see if it can really go. But I think this is a reasonable swing to look at. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised to see it show some resistance to the upside. But I mean, it's gap free up to 1034. So 1034 probably meets up at the 702, I would imagine. It looks like the 618 uh, right there. You can see that. Uh, so if this is setting up for some sort of retracement back up into that area, we think we just uh, got some good shares added. But we'll see. Looking at Alibaba's daily chart, you can see a little bit of selling pressure up to those 90s, which is expected. That's it's had some resistance there the last couple days, and it tried holding it as support the previous day as well. So probably needs a little bit more time, but if this trend line can continue to hold, I would say that uh, over top of 90, we got to see it fill this 94 gap, but from 94, if it gets over top of 96, we think that that could be a reasonable price action taking place there. Looking around elsewhere, looking at some top volume for the day. We can look at the top losers for the day too. These cannabis names kind of getting sold a little bit, just a little bit of profit taking is what I would take. CGC, Indecision Candle, Tilray. I would say Tilray almost looks like a reasonable long, and it has some clear resistance up to those 360s. So I mean, from current price, I'd say 20% upside move could be in play still. Probably has some sort of uptrend building as well. SoFi up to 902s. I think SoFi looks like a decent add, even above 9. It just has some levels that needs to work out, but if this really starts building that U shape, nice move off the open. I would say if it gave up 90s, that'd be a little bit concerning, but even if it gives up 90s, you have a reasonable trend line that comes down into the next high, which is your 80s, which held above the whole back half of the day yesterday. Rivian did catch a bit off those 90s. You can see sort of a stair step look. Here's your 1, 2, 3. Well, there's not really much pullback there. It's just trying to decide whether it wants to break out higher. We'll need the trade down a little bit. ATHM retracing up, so let's see if this can start to curl back down and wick through that 2910, and we will be adding some more of that if that does come into play like that. Devon gaps up on oil strength and now just kind of gives up the move a little bit. If it gives out these lows, I would say, possibly back down to the gap. ASTS, trying to churn higher. Is it going to be able to get over 410s? We'll start with 410s, but if this can continue showing this sort of upward channel, I'd say it looks decent. But for now, we'll keep it on this SoFi. That's what the new trade is for today, and we'll see how that goes. But ATHM continuing to churn higher, man. Just so close to really trying to add some shares there. So we will be back. I just gotta go to the bathroom real quick. And we're back. I mean, looking around, I think the biggest note for today would be oil. Continuing the churn higher. I mean, we talked about this sideways consolidation. You can, or nope. It's funny how this looks kind of like the daily chart. But you can see, yeah, sideways consolidation period, taking out the highs. That 88 is a nice break. Holding strength. We go look at the 15 like we were, and I don't see. Uh, we don't really have anything marked until 90 flat, so I would expect continuation. Has a strong trend on the day. Looking over at SoFi. SoFi trading back down. You can see I'm expecting a little selling pressure into those nines. But I like the way that this is looking. It might need to give up this trend. If it does, we can think about probably those 850s. 850 seems reasonable. There's probably 100 different ways you could set that trend. Uh, but you can see actually flirting like it wants to break a channel here as well. So whether this is set perfectly or not, I would say it's a reasonable channel that I tried flirting with, but now it's rejecting. So is it not ready to go yet? Maybe it's not. But we feel risk reward. Uh, it's not gonna hurt us too bad if this doesn't catch a bid off of 92s or just the open price of today. I'd say down the into the 80s seems reasonable. If those same longs can jump in and push the name higher, looks pretty good. Rivian kind of giving up the low or the level, the previous high as well. So looking at it from a retracement type of look, 2350 is that 702. But looking at the daily candle, kind of a washout wick. If this is building a frowny face, we'll give it the trend line. And at least we got some outs on the name. We didn't get any 23s added today, but I'd say Soundhound probably the loser stock, but we'll give it probably 20s. You can see just not catching any type of relief where if it was going to, it would have done it, we feel. We've given this as much patience as we possibly can. Our best fill coming in off 30s. But continuing to just try and hold that level. Is it going to be able to or not? I don't know. But you can see that's your support level right there. But let's go make sure we got that order out ready to go. Amps, kind of the same look. At least it's trying to set some sort of higher low double bottom type of look. BAC, we said that this one actually did have a little bit of volume. Now if it get over 2870s, I'd say looks pretty decent. So far just filled 94s. We'll see if we can get a fill here off 92s. And after 92s, I'd say um, we'll give it maybe one more fill and then try the trend line. And then we'll put outs right underneath of that red engulfing candle. So didn't quite fill those 92s, but we did get 94s filled there. Didn't fill 92s, but we got 94s added there. So we'll give this a little bit of time. ASTS, just not enough buying pressure, but if it could hold fours, I'm optimistic on what that can do today. Geo trying to hold 710 low. Boyle catching a nice bid. a nice increased volume, actually getting over top of this high right here. I'd say pullbacks into 56 seems pretty decent. Or your first out's up to 60, 61, even from current price is respectable. A lot of green volume over the last few days. Kind of reminds me of Vail. Uh, I'm not going to say they're super identical, but Vail actually has a gap up that represented it, where you kind of had that small W pattern. You had a gap to the upside, and then you look at Boyle. There's that small W pattern, except from here it had a gap up. There's your gap, and then Vail is trading probably equivalent to like 68s right now. There's your gap. So your relative move from that little breakout area was 5%, and then from the gap was another 3%. So 60% of the move to the gap, if we're equating that. So your move to the gap is about 5%, and you're looking for another 60% of that move from the gap, which is about 3.5. So you're looking at probably up to that 64. So I mean, this is honestly a pretty good look, aside from just the weakness, but a lot of good volume coming in there. Is it gonna be anything that can, really get going? I don't know. Sound down trying to hold. If they can hold that stop long enough, maybe there's a chance. SoFi catching a small bid. So buyers trying to hold that price range, up to 96s now. Is this a little consolidation? Tried to catch a bid pushing up to 903. Looking at the 1 minute, just a lot lighter volume relative to the move up. So once this kind of gave up, you see a little bit of exits. And is it trying to build some support, trying to catch some sort of move off of these 92s? So that's the price that we're trying to buy right there. ASTS still holding. Invos, wick tops up to 42. GM still holding 33s. BAC cracking over top of that flat top that we had marked right there. A nice hold of those 2850s. You can see the open candle, boom, breaks those 2850s. We retest 2850s, and now we're actually trying to take out the highs from yesterday. If this can continue to hold this price range right here, we look at the daily chart, and you can see the sort of trend that we're trying to hold, where I would say I'm not going to be bullish on the move until we can get over 29s. We'll start with 29s, but in particular, this sort of flat top here at 2930s, where if we do get a 2930 print, maybe some rejection, but could be the start. If we see 2930s print, could be the start of an inverse head and shoulders, potentially a pullback, respective 2850, and to the upside, we could potentially go from there. But you could say clear out at this 30 gap, which a little bit under 30, but I think it's a reasonable look. It's gonna need more information, and obviously, I mean, the bigger picture is that you have a clear descending channel. So if this sort of trend doesn't want to hold, where this is pulled over further like that, uh, we need to see this descending channel eventually break. But I mean, if that channel didn't break, I could see lower 20s coming on into play, where your support, your neckline, your gap meeting in this middle 20s. If we break this, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't even be surprised if 1950s to 20s was better support range. You can see sort of retesting that flat top. I'd say is a very good long-term add. 1850s. SoFi, we'll see if we get this fill here on SoFi or not. Doesn't look like we did. But we're going to try and get those 892 fills there. ATHM continuing the churn higher. Are we going to finally see some rejection and curl back down? That's what we're rooting for. I really thought based off this red move to the downside, really light volume, that we were going to see this come down into 29 flat again. So I'm a little disappointed there, but all in all, nothing to panic about yet. I would say off of more information, I think it's easy to see that, we are probably still in this descending channel, tight channel. Or we're kind of deviating away from it. Honestly, if we were mapping it out like this, as in, we could potentially be in a descending wedge, that if it caught a bid and showed a push, a retest of that 28 and hold, could be something there. So far, we're just waiting to see if we can get 92s filled here. Oil continuing to churn higher and not caring about anything. Rig a nice churn higher. And that should have been 92s filled there. So we'll see what this price action can do here. I feel my phone vibrate at least. I'll just check to see if we got 92s. Well, yeah, we actually didn't get 892s there. Let me see what the bids tape's looking like. There was 82 lots there on 92s. Still didn't get the fill. ATSA, ASTS. We think that this level right here can really start churning. If it can take out that level right there on this red candle, not too much volume increase, and still has a little wick of buying. So we can see they're trying to buy the name up. Rivian pulling back in. Nice move off the open. Looking at the move, coming down into these 50s. CRNX, actually not a half bad look. Actually, not terrible. It doesn't look like it's too volatile either. You know, this move, I mean, it is $3, but I mean, looking at we, I would not be surprised to see a little bit of continuation here. This actually is a pretty decent look. Um, you know, if it gave you this sort of look, and it does have a nice flat, where all it would take is a break to get this to move higher. But decent amount of, which is day 2. I do like this SoFi right here, though. I'm a little disappointed I didn't get that 92 fill. That is kind of bogus, if you ask me. I had that order out a while ago, so not too much pressure. Uh, you can see this Rivian catching a little bit of a bid off of that level. Let's say your bigger type of trend line, though, is more so still for a 23 hold. But I don't know if I'd want to see it get underneath of that. ATHM wicking up to those 80s. WBA, a nice bull flag. You know, didn't have a lot of volume. ASTS, you can see really setting up this flat top here at 07s. But watch out for that washout top for that 10. You could say it's at 08, but I'd say to be safe, I'd go for those 410s. So we'll see if that can sort of push higher. SoFi up to 95s. Not on the tape. Now they are pushing higher and actually chipping out some 96s right now. So yeah, a little disappointed we didn't see, and actually chipping 97s now. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed we didn't get those 92 fills, which was a little bit bigger of an order. So that's kind of sucks, but you know, it's either going to give us this move where it tries to build this U, where we can think of Trims up to this 905, up to 910, maybe 913. If we get lucky, we can get a break where 34s, sure. Just marking that first out. I mean, it's already showing you that we have early looks of that first retracement really panning out. That 382 meets up right at that first extension. Uh, we're looking higher at half and that 10 flat for the full extension. Not a half bad look. End phase still trying to churn sideways. I'd say you're gonna have a descending type of channel look. Rivian still holding that retracement level. I'd say 50s is what I'd want to see hold, but if this pulled down in a little bit lower, could be something to reload. We got a 1/10 trim on the name. That's all we've had. I believe it was 30s. Nothing to really brag about today. If I was going to take a trade, I'd be looking at this Wii trade, where all it would take is a hold of these 450s. So 450s actually looking reasonable. We can see taking out that washout top. Volume really picked up on the breakout, but filled that gap on that first really volume increase candle and continued higher. So buyers are pushing it. Two, kind of breaking this descending wedge as of now. SoFi up to 98. Apparently this looks like a long, but I mean gaps up, rejecting that first level, still weak. You're expecting this to build some sort of U sort of look. SoFi rejecting that 9 flat. PayPal holding 63s. We got 1, 2, 3 pullback candles. Filled the gap, check the box there, retest that gap. Now trying to push higher. Rivian, nice hold. I'd expect some pressure into those upper. Soundhound still somehow holding the level. I can't even believe it. UWM not really caring about the gap. Gave a small push originally, but I would say probably a better look is Yeah, I mean, BWM, I just not seeing it yet. Downtown trying to push higher. Um, I mean, nothing really moving too much that we really like. SoFi, I am, the more this keeps pushing to test up into the nines, I would say I'm a little disappointed those 92s didn't fill. Personally, I think that is kind of bogus, but you know, what do you do? Rivian, we were thinking about starting to reload that. It's been a while since we looked at PDD. SoFi up to that 9 level. And phase trying to push Baba's complete flat. Looking at the green candle. That 786 trying to hold. Looking at PDD. Man, that's a pretty dandy look right there. Um, right near that 100 flat. GM, let's see what this 15 minutes looking like. Candles getting smaller, decreasing volume off a nice volume increase open. Uh, is this gonna have the strength to push? I don't know. DFS, notable move. Got very close to that gap. I'd say, looking at WeWork, this does pull back into towards this level. Um, Interesting little setup right here. Even on this retracement up, you can see the bink bink, a little increased volume. So if it pulls back in near this 50s, I would say we could. But I would say you have a decent little setup right here on WeWork. Let's look at SoFi, still right around that 9 level. Soundhound right at 230s. That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. BAC continuing the churn higher, flirting with that day high from yesterday. Actually, just officially pushing it right now. Nice churn, nice little setup, green move on increased volume. Not really, but this pullback, boom, 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 3 candles, has the increased volume for the washout wick, closes as a decent candle, and now starting to churn a little bit higher. It's a Palantir. Looking at trading right near that trend line. Opened up right by that trend line. Tried to take out the top. Trading back in. Kind of a similar setup to Rivian. So I'm not surprised that I was interested in this little setup on Palantir yesterday. And then we actually ended up taking the Rivian, which had that sort of same level. I mean, two different names. Charts are a little bit different, of course. We were coming back into these 50s. This is going to be an area that can hold. I think you have clear outs underneath these lows, and it is leaving a little bit of a wick. That wick comes down to 43s. SoFi bid now holding 9s. This consolidation, this is an ideal setup for a leg higher, honestly. Uh, you have the increased volume on the push candle, closes as a nice candle, a little bit of a washout top, but decreasing volume, matched with the indecision with the wick of buying, also matches that red candle. Tries to push higher, just didn't have the volume, trades back down, wicking down into that top of the body candle of candle number 2, and now if this were to take out 407s, I think you're going to see some increased volume coming in on the name personally. Um, SoFi continuing the churn higher. Really disappointing that we didn't get those 92 fills. That was our biggest order fill for the name. A little disappointed that that didn't fill. We had small fills off 96 and 94. Um, but yeah, I would say I'm a little disappointed that that didn't fill. Yeah, I don't know why. We were testing lower. I'd say a risk reward right around this area. Orders off that 35 looked pretty good. Let's maybe think about WeWork. Some would say that looks like a double top, but I mean the volume, red engulfing, you'd think stair step, but it's able to try and push some of these levels. I mean, you got clear out on the name underneath of 30, which it honestly could just wick through those 30s. BAC, just a nice churn higher. I'd say BAC looks good. ATHM, probably missed my opportunity to buy the name today, but that doesn't mean that it can't come back down in later on the day and maybe even tomorrow, where we're gonna try this name for a swing trade. Trying to keep this WeWork on watch. I really like this look, but honestly, looking at the daily chart, still a weak name, which is the only big concerning part. And it does fill this gap right here at 40s. So that's a little bit scary, but just the setup on this, uh, on this, holding this range at 35s. I mean, you have clear outs. We'll see if it can hold this price right here. It's trying to break down 38s right now. I'd say risk reward is definitely there. We're really tempted to buy this. I don't see a lot of selling pressure coming in, but not a lot of buying either. Let's try this for a starter position here. But we do have a fill on the name. We'll see if we can get one more fill off of 35s. I feel that is the support level that's trying to hold here. It could give us a flush through this level, but I think that was a really good support add right there. So we'll see if this can end up breaking out. We got 38 halves on that fill. So I mean, the tape was at 37s. Where we got that fill, we can probably give it a little bit of risk underneath at 25s as well. But now 40's holding on the tape. So we're gonna try this WeWork. If we can get a break over 80s, I think this rips personally. We're looking at some outs for the name. a rip. We could be seeing a test up to 5 again, which is day high. If we see it break that, 635s would be an area that we'd expect some gap fill selling. Now we got 42s, now 43s holding on the tape. Let's see if this can reclaim 50s. That'd be a nice move, but wicking down into that level, that is a really nice start. I mean, looking at the 5 minute, you can also see what that volume is starting to look like. I'd expect selling pressure into those 50s. But a nice move, testing back up to those 50s. Oh, let's see if we can take a fill here. Trying the reclaim 50s. 52 lots on 50s. And a nice wick off into that level. Chipping away some 50s there. But now giving up that size that we had on 47s. Got 2 lots on 45s. Looks like we're going to trade back in unless some buying can come in here. Chipped away some 49s there. Now the bid's trying to stack on 48s. Not able to. But chipped away some 49s was big. I'm sure it's going to have some size off of 49s as well. SoFi holding 9s. In phase testing up to those 123.50s. Size on the ask coming in at 47s now. Down into 40s. Probably could have just cut that at 50s, expecting to be able to get a reload in. Which I'd probably take this reload here at 40s if we just cut the thing at 50s. But I'm still not going to deny that this is a reasonable setup. Underneath 30s is going to be the out. Bid stacked on 42s. Here's 38 coming in. See if we get these 35 fills here. And some 35s going through the tape. Let's see if our 35s got filled there. We did not get 35s filled there, which is more than unbelievable. This will be time number 2 today, potentially number 2 today for the wick into my bid and not fill the order, which makes me want to chuck something across the room if I'm being completely honest. But doesn't mean we're not going to get filled on this one. This one I'm not as confident with. But tapped 35s again. We better have gotten it this time. We still didn't get this fill off 35s, which is more than unbelievable. To tap 35s twice right there and to not get a fill. Which is just, I don't even have words for that. If this pushes 50s, SoFi catching a nice bid, nice U build. If it pulls back in, I still like the ad, but up to 905s, I mean, doesn't even make sense. And we work up to 44s, so I mean, I'm speechless on that. To tap 35s twice there, and 35s go through the tape 2 different times. I mean, I'd be a lot more inclined to take some trims in these mid 40s. You know, if it tests back up to this 50 range, would probably definitely have some outs. Okay, let's come down and fill this 35 order. Right in at this level. Let's just switch this to a market and try it. Alright, well, we ended up buying it higher, so we'll see if this can catch a bid. I'm expecting some selling pressure into those 50s. Still like the out at 30s. You know, underneath that wick low would be a little concerning, but can still catch a bid. You know, starting to catch a little bit of a bid. Bid stacked on 43s. Bid stacked on 45s. Not too much size on 47s this time around. Now some size coming in off 47s. It doesn't mean that it can't take that out. ASTS still sitting right there. Off of this move, let's see what this 30-minute chart looks like. There's 48. 20 lots stacked on 47s, which is the first time we've seen the bid climb up that high. Took out those 47s, took out 46s. We got a 3-penny spread. First time we've seen a little bit of a spread on the name. So anybody's game to clear that spread. Took out 48, 3-penny spread. And there is a little bit of a sell off there, but 56 lots off of these 40s. 56 lots on 39s. Underneath the 35s is going to be concerning. But all in all, that's going to call it for today's live stream. I'm going to put a stop in and go get some food. I'll catch you guys later.